Welcome. I'm Jeff Prather, and this is the Prather Point. Beyond the State of the Union's excellent moments where two well-deserved Medal of Honors were awarded and outright lies that Iran has missiles that can reach Europe, Trump has sent two clear messages to Iran and Mexico. Trump's El Mencho message to the Mexican cartels, we're going to talk about that, and Iran surgical strikes replace regime change. Also, prostate proof that Epstein was replaced. And is Cuba American boat kill the next false flag? And then SABRE CEO Steve SLEPCEVIC Mexican rescue effort via BeReady123.com is up as well. So Trump's message to the Mexican cartels following the killing of El Mencho was clear. The U.S. will aggressively target drug traffickers responsible for fentanyl flowing into America. He hailed the operation that killed Nemesio Asegura Cervantes, leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, as a major victory, declaring during his State of the Union, "We've also taken down one of the most sinister cartel kingpins." And indeed, he did. The CJNG is believed to be responsible for the majority of fentanyl entering the U.S. And Trump framed El Mencho's death as proof of that strategy, combining intelligence sharing, rewards up to $15 million, and extradition pressure while working with Mexican forces supported by U.S. intelligence. The broader warning to cartels was that no leader is beyond the reach of Trump's administration, emphasizing that cartel violence against Mexican security forces, such as the 25 National Guard deaths after El Mencho's killing, would not deter U.S. resolve. The message was reinforced by high-profile extraditions and public statements. The Mexican drug cartels know not to lay a finger on a single American, or they will pay a severe consequence. This is a reinstatement of the Kiki Camarena policy, finally. So agents, like with my old agency, the DEA, in Mexico will be safer for it. The 59-year-old former police officer was killed by the Mexican army during a shootout in the town of Tapalpa in Jalisco, his home state, on Sunday. Mexico's defense ministry said in a statement that the operation was planned and executed by the country's special forces. The U.S. provided intelligence support to the Mexican authorities for the operation to capture El Mencho. The killing sparked chaos in Mexico with reports of roadblocks, arson, and flight disruptions. But the cartel did not take over the airport as initially reported. Retaliatory violence saw at least 25 National Guard members killed. Mexican officials said surveillance of a romantic partner's movements helped confirm Oseguera's location near Tapalpa. He stayed on with her over 2 minutes, allowing for SIGINT. So that may be a Tier 1 special missions unit because that is their signature specialty. And while 7 Special Forces, my old group, had been in there recently, and I had thought it was them or SEAL Team 4, which is the Latin American SEAL Team, I have to correct myself, and I've heard it is now SEAL Team 2, which I have no idea why it's SEAL Team 2, unless they're now the Latin America team to do the training for the mission. And likely they were on the ground as advisors as well, along with special mission intelligence units personnel, or in the air at least. Anyway, Mexico emphasized the U.S. intelligence supported the manhunt, while underscoring there was no participation by U.S. forces in the raid. But it is very telling that U.S. military were able to assist and train, because that did not happen in my day. In my day, all of my operations, my most dangerous operations were cross-border operations in Mexico, but I was only there as a DEA special agent, never there as an American soldier. Mexican Special Forces also killed a senior CJNG operative known as El Tuli during an operation that followed the death of El Mencho. According to Mexico's defense ministry, El Tuli was the cartel leader's top financial and logistics chief and helped orchestrate retaliatory attacks across Jalisco after the raid that mortally wounded El Mencho. Officials say that he was fatally shot while attempting to flee, although rumors say that both he and El Mencho were executed after capture to silence revelations of any governmental connection. Defense officials say El Tuli offered 20,000 pesos, about $1,160 for each soldier killed during the clashes, and that he was killed while attempting to flee in a vehicle during a security operation in El Grullo, Jalisco, according to the report. Mexican authorities said that they seized more than 7.2 million pesos, $965,000 in U.S. currency, weapons, and the vehicle used in the attempted escape, and turned the assets over to the Attorney General's office for financial tracing, the Mexican Attorney General, which I also used to work with quite a bit as well, by the way. Trump has laid a line in the sand on human, especially child trafficking. There has been zero illegal immigration since January 2026. That is quite an accomplishment. According to U.S. Border Protection and Department of Homeland Security. This marks a historic milestone in border security, with zero illegal aliens released into the U.S. interior during this period. But the unsaid message to the cartels is to return to cocaine and marijuana and stay out of the China fentanyl and human trafficking trade. And so that's the clear message that is being sent. On Iran, has Trump replaced surgical strikes for Iran with regime change? Well, it certainly looks like it. And this is good news. With DNI Gabbard, Joint Chiefs of Chairman General Dan Kane, and former CIA boss Petraeus, all warning that the U.S.-Iran regime war for Israel will fail or at best flounder, Trump appears to be switching to surgical strikes. He now has spokesmen, unofficial spokesmen, talking about surgical strikes, where he was talking about a 10 to 15-day deadline before. Iran has $200 billion flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. Stoppage or slowing upsets the global economy. What Trump exactly doesn't want right now. The U.S. Navy is already stretched and strained. Toilet sabotage on the carrier Ford, which has been at sea since June 2025 and is now in Crete, so the sailors don't have to wait in line for 45 minutes for a toilet because they're flushing T-shirts down the head and are going ashore to actually go. Number two is strained at best, and this indicates low morale. And regime change would require sustained naval operations in the Middle East, and this could even risk, at this point, mutiny. China and Russia are now aligned with Iran. A unified enemy is far different and more effective than a China tariff war and a Ukraine proxy war. Further, Iran invoked international law by writing and thus documenting to the UN that in self-defense, Iran considered regional U.S. bases legitimate military targets. Remember, the last time they attacked U.S. military, they told them in advance so there would be no U.S. personnel hurt. Iran is surrounded by American bases and prodded by America and Israel, and is doing her best to avoid war. But she does have a cogent strategy and coherent strategy. Iran continues to negotiate. Iran has spent decades preparing not to win quickly, which is what Trump always wants to do, but ensuring that any conflict with its adversaries becomes drawn out and costly. Its strategy is not centered on territorial conquest or flashy tactical successes. Iran does not aim for a knockout blow. It seeks to draw its enemies into prolonged conflicts that drain their resources, erode political capital, and consume time, ultimately exhausting even the most powerful militaries. And that's exactly what the U.S. military does and has done since the first Gulf War, since the U.S. military learned its lessons in Vietnam when Walter Cronkite presented the Tet Offensive as a major success for the North Vietnamese, when in actuality it was exactly the opposite. It was a complete failure. So then during the first Gulf War, we knew we had to win very quickly. And that's when the Chinese watched us win so quickly and said, no one can take the U.S. military head on, and so we're not going to, and developed the formal doctrine of unrestricted warfare, which the genius generals still don't recognize. Trump has recognized that with his tariff war countering China, which is the first and only effort to counter them. Analysts obsess over interception rates, how many Iranian missiles were shot down, or how effectively Israeli or American missile defense systems performed. But what matters is not how well defenses perform on day one, but how they can be sustained. It's just like the regular question is, can you take the objective, but then can you hold it? Iran's philosophy is, can we outlast the United States' interest? And of course, there is no interest in a war with Iran in America. It is all Israeli-backed. Ballistic missile systems, interceptors, are not only expensive, but also slow to produce. Offensive missiles, especially those made in Iran, are comparatively cheap and easier to produce at scale. In practical terms, a single interceptor does not guarantee the defeat of a single missile. In reality, defenders frequently fire 2 interceptors per inbound threat to hedge against failure. That's very correct. That's just like why you do a controlled pair or a hammer when you are shooting. Clearly, this is problematic for the defender. Iran understands this dynamic. Its strategy is built around exhausting missile defense systems rather than defeating them quickly. It is irrelevant whether 80% or even 90% of missiles are intercepted if the small percentage that gets through can inflict economic damage, close airspace, or lower morale, thereby creating political pressure. Over time, the penetration rate increases because defensive resources becomes depleted. The June 2025 Iran-Israel war was an example of the reality at play. Israel's Arrow 2 and 3 interceptors were heavily expended. The U.S. had to step in with a backstop, deploying THAAD missile batteries and expanding large numbers of M401 Talon interceptors alongside ship-launched SM-3 interceptors from U.S. Navy destroyers. Tactically, the defense worked. Strategically, it imposed a cost that the United States cannot afford to repeat. The depth of an arsenal is the most critical factor in any conflict. Replenishing high-end BMD interceptors takes years, even with the most optimistic projections. Restoring U.S. THAAD interceptor stocks to pre-June 2025 levels will not occur until around 2027. This is unfolding as China continues its military buildup, where those same interceptors are vital for deterrence in the Western Pacific. Every interceptor used in Israel is not available for other purposes. Each time the missile defense assets are deployed to the Middle East, there's a there's an opportunity cost. The United States is no longer operating in isolation. It is balancing a multi-theater competition with limited resources. Iran, by contrast, needs only to ensure that the offensive arsenal remains larger than the defensive inventory arrayed against it. In this respect, Iran holds a decisive advantage. This is why dismissing Iranian drones as ineffective misses the point. Drones shot down still impose a cost. They tie up combat air patrols and force the expenditure of air defense munitions. This is a form of attrition. Yemen occupies a peculiar position in Iran's regional strategy. From a purely military standpoint, it is too far from Israel to be an optimal platform for decisive strikes. This has led some observers to dismiss Ansar Allah's role as marginal or symbolic, but this is a mistake. Ansar Allah's primary role is not to launch direct decisive attacks against Israel. Instead, the focus is on maritime coercion, economic disruption, and strategic harassment. The Bab al-Mandeb Strait is a narrow choke point through which a vast number of global commerce flows. Most Iran-supplied anti-ship munitions in Ansar Allah's arsenal are optimized for range rather than payload. Their warheads are relatively small, and they are often launched in modest numbers. The objective is not to destroy warships outright, but to tie down naval assets that could be tasked elsewhere. In effect, Yemen functions as a force in being. The mere existence of a credible anti-ship capabilities compels various navies to conduct escort missions for merchant traffic. Warships are a limited resource. Each destroyer sent to the Red Sea is one less available for areas like the Gulf or the Pacific. And of course, Iran can shut down the Strait of Hormuz. And the carriers can't go in there because they are too vulnerable. Additionally, these threats drive up insurance premiums, increasing the cost of transiting the Red Sea. As a result, some shipping companies opt to avoid the region altogether, considering the risk too high, even with escort protection for their vessels. Israel assassinations of senior figures, often in their homes, sometimes alongside family members, introduced a new psychological dynamic. Iranian leaders are no longer weighing abstract regime and survival alone. They are weighing personal survival. Air power can impose costs. It cannot end the war. The reality is what Trump confronts and seeks to avoid. Civil aviation is the lifeblood of Dubai, Doha, and Abu Dhabi, which are global hubs. Airspace closures, even temporary, have cascading effects. Aircraft diversions, insurance spikes, stranded passengers, and reputational damage. Tens of billions of dollars worth of wide-body aircraft sit exposed in airports at any given time. Trump is aware of this because he is a transactional president. He's very much a businessman and aware of the global economic implications of all of this. This vulnerability explains Arab mediation efforts far better than appeals to regional harmony. These states are not neutral out of altruism. They are rational actors seeking to avoid becoming collateral damage in a war they cannot control. Most importantly, Iran is not like Venezuela, even though Venezuela was preparation for Iran. Libya, it was not like Libya or Iraq in 2003. It is a large, ancient, resilient country with significant military capabilities, including the largest ballistic missile arsenals in the Middle East, and institutions built to endure hardship and external pressure. And that's the key for regime change. And that's why everyone is telling Trump, except for Hegseth, that that campaign won't be quick. It wouldn't be over in a week. The regime can survive. Its regional reach, a culture centered on resistance and survival, means it does not have to win fast. It only needs to make sure its opponents don't. And of course, as I've always pointed out, and the genius generals and politicians always forget, bombing doesn't reduce resistance, it increases it. The exception being nuclear war with Japan. Trump knows how a failed military gamble can destroy a presidency. He also understands that a prolonged Middle East war would shatter his narrative. This is why symbolic strikes, demonstrations of resolve without open-ended escalation, are far more attractive now than full-scale war. So this is the good news about Mexico and Iran, and Trump actually listening to some of his staff as opposed to simply Israeli propaganda. Beyond that, the medical examiner who studied Epstein's corpse noted an enlarged prostate. But Epstein's own words and medical records and released files indicate his prostate was removed. So there is the prostate proof that Epstein was replaced. Someone is saying Iran is a very mountainous country as well, which aids in its defense. That's very true as well. Mountainous countries like Afghanistan are never able to be held. The terrain defeats everyone as well. Cuba is reporting 4 dead after a gunfire exchange with a U.S. registered boat. Cuban officials said yesterday, that 4 people were killed and 6 others injured after a U.S. registered speedboat entered Cuban waters and exchanged gunfires with the country's border patrol force. In a statement, Cuba's Ministry of Interior said the incident occurred Wednesday morning, approximately 1 nautical mile northeast of the El Pino Canal in Cayo Falcones. According to the ministry, a speedboat registered in Florida entered Cuban territorial waters and opened fire on Border Patrol troops. A Cuban Border Patrol vessel approached the boat for identification, at which point the individuals aboard the speedboat began shooting. Cuban authorities responded, resulting in what the ministry described as a confrontation that left 4 people on the boat dead and 6 others wounded. And those others are being treated. In response, Florida Attorney General James Utmeyer said he directed state officials to initiate an investigation into the incident. The Cuban government cannot be trusted and will do everything in our power to hold these communists accountable, Utmeyer wrote on a statement in X. The incident comes amid heightened tensions between Washington and Havana. Cuba is currently facing an energy crisis after the Trump administration moved to block oil shipments from Venezuela to the island nation. Early this year, American military forces captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro in Caracas and transferred him to the United States to face drug charges, removing a longtime Cuba ally. So Cuba's economy is really in trouble since the Venezuelan operation. This is a domino effect, and garbage is piling up, and the Cuban regime is teetering. Of course, everyone has been saying that for many years. As of Wednesday afternoon, the United States Department of State had not issued a public statement regarding this. So the real question is this a false flag designed to bring about more war and overthrow the Cuban government? And so that seems less than likely, although there are a lot of interesting parallels. Remember, the year before the Venezuelan operations, former Green Berets were caught coming into Venezuela. And that operation was stopped. That was a probe. And the probes into Cuba have been going on since the 60s with the Cuban displaced community and the CIA supporting all of these efforts and sending folks in there to kill Cuban citizens, essentially commit terrorism and acts of aggression. So it would be safe to assume that this group as well was CIA sponsored, and that this is a probe, just like the Green Berets were last year in Venezuela. So what does that mean? Well, that could mean that the Trump administration via the CIA intends regime change in the coming future in Cuba. And indeed, the Cuban government is reeling at this time. The New York Post reported that the guy was a Cuban truck driver, Miguel Ortega Casanova, truck driver who fell into obsessive and diabolical quest for Cuba's freedom when the 4 passengers killed. Well, that's what the New York Times is saying, but it's likely that this was CIA sponsored and this was a probe to test the security. Also, there's another major question is the U.S. Coast Guard patrols those waters very carefully. So how did that speedboat get through there? Well, it was likely allowed to go through there. And the probe is to test how good and secure the efforts are. Drop Amber, Major Prather, I missed it. Where was the good news? Well, the good news is that Trump seems to have blinked on Iran for all the variety of reasons I just talked about. That's good news. And also that Trump's message through the El Mencho killing to the Mexican cartels is clear, and that is stop killing Americans with fentanyl, because the death toll is incredible, and also harm no Americans. If you'll notice, none of the Americans sheltering in place in Mexico right now in Puerto Vallarta have been taken hostage by the cartels. There's a very clear reason for that. Under Pedo Joe, American children and families were left in Afghanistan, and you could do whatever. But this is a great thing about Trump, is that Trump has warned the cartels not to harm Americans. And this goes back to what I was saying, the old Camarena policy. And of course, I was trying to extradite Miguel Caro Quintero, whose brother and he murdered and tortured our agent, Kiki Camarena. And when that happened, Customs shut down the border completely, and DEA agents went into Mexico. and it made a huge, huge difference. And the lesson was clear. If you come after one of our agents, we will be relentless and come after you, which is why I was still trying to extradite Miguel Caro Quintero. And of course, that's how I got into trouble. But this is very good because this is making things much, much safer for Americans in general and American agents working down there. Because still, Americans are not allowed to carry guns. American agents are not allowed to carry guns in Mexico. We did back in my day, simply because it was too dangerous, and we weren't going to. The lesson was we're not going to end up like Camarena, tortured to death. And the lesson was, make your way back, and we just had our pistols under our shirts there as well. So that is a summary of the good news there. Somebody asked also, how come U.S. military leaders don't read Sun Tzu? Well, the professionals do. I certainly have. But all the political appointees are simply ambitious, and they are not very well trained as well. So I mentioned earlier that there were some great things about the State of the Union address, and then there were some outright lies. The outright lies were that Iran has missiles that can reach the United States, that they're about to develop a nuclear weapon. The good things were the awards of the Medal of Honor, very well deserved. Army Chief Warrant Officer 5, CW 5, that rank doesn't even exist anymore. Eric Slover was awarded the Big Blue, the Medal of Honor. So was Navy Captain Royce Williams, who was 100, who downed 4 enemy fighters in Korea. And Chief Slover was shot in the legs and still managed to bring his Black Hawk under control so he could put the Delta troops on the ground. So that is really exceptional and very well deserved. Now, I must mention that while Slover stood there on crutches without his legs, the Democrats sat. And of course, that is very shameful. So setting the stage there for what is happening in Mexico, which is good, with the message from Trump of the El Mencho killing, my guest is Steve SLEPCEVIC, I think I'm saying that right, of SABRE Systems, who is going to go into Mexico, as I understand it, to perform some rescue operations. So that's very interesting to me and very timely. And of course, a big sponsor for the show is BeReady123.com, sat123.com, where you can get your Iridium 9555 phone. And I've always told you I've used SATCOM in the military and in Operation Snowcap. Best thing to SATCOM is SAT phones. So I think this operation can be very successful. And I'm very optimistic about it for the reasons I've mentioned earlier. So, Steve, welcome to the show.
Well, Jeffrey, good to have you. Good to see
you. I think we have a lot in common because I've actually directed child rescue operations in Mexico, and my company, Warrior School, had major government contracts with all the military branches, including the Coast Guard, all the intelligence agencies. And it sounds like SABRE is very similar to that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, I mean, on the security side of it, we provide executive protection for a lot of VIPs, provided security for people like Tulsi, Bobby, and so on in this space. Worked with Charlie Kirk on a 6-part docuseries called Border Battles. And been involved in the aspect of exposing it, of all the migrant children that were being trafficked being drugged, the cartels moving through the border, the East Africans, the Chinese nationals, all the stands that that don't like us. But on this recent op, we were talking about Mexico, that popped off as soon as it started happening. We immediately start getting notifications and calls to our dispatch, because we represent a lot of VIPs that were down in Puerto Vallarta in Guadalajara, and their goal was to get them out as quickly as possible. Now, as you know, operational wise, there was a TFR in place, so there was no American assets going in there to be able to extract people. The huge for us is, we operate in over 70 countries, but under SRP, Strategic Response Partners, is our disaster management arm. And we had done work down in Acapulco during Hurricane Otis. And the search and rescue team, Mexico search and rescue team that was on the ground with us, the main guys that run that are actually pilots, some of the best pilots in Mexico. And so immediately we already had security teams on the ground, but we didn't have aerial assets. I called Jorge and Marta, and I'm like, hey, what do you got and where do you have it? So between their aviation school, all the airplanes in their hangar, they started immediately. We pushed security groups out of that area into Cuernavaca, and out of an FBO out there, started flying people back to the States to get them back to safety. But it was a rapid movement because, as you know, you have seconds, minutes, everything counts. So while people were watching, we were fully operational, moving people out off the X, and many of them flying them to Tijuana to where they could simply cross the border using our Mexican counterparts there. But again, it's all trusted. You always have to know who's who in the zoo to get people safely. I always tell people, while standing on top of rubble, we're never shaking hands. If I don't meet you before, I don't know what you're doing. Don't come at me. Don't send your stuff. I'm not going to look at it. I'm going to break bread. I'm going to train with you. I'm going to run the process. I'm going to know who you are before we ever get into a hot zone. And that's not the time to make friendships, relationships. Yes, you could see each other operating in it, but you have those meetings afterwards. And the nice thing is the last flights, the last extractions, planes landed last night. And right now it's quiet because the commercial airlines are running. And then I saw groups that were showing, they were on the news that they're going in yesterday. And for me, when those NGOs do that, that's not cool. This, I mean, me, I got no filter. That's not cool. I'm going to call it like it is. The commercial airlines are open. People are running. There's some sort of normalcy now, right? But the issue was when it happened, the first 48 hours was critical where people couldn't get out. Now they can get out, but go ahead.
No, I think that's fascinating because you had already done disaster relief work with your counterparts in Acapulco. You'd already built up a rapport and trust. And so you knew everybody. And that's a great way to do that. That's a great way to do it in the States too. My Team America does that with local state teams as well. That's really ingenious.
Yeah, just have the drills. I always tell people, create a community, right? You could call it a neighborhood watch, a community brigade, whatever you want to do. Get to know your neighbors, man. This is, I saw how when we responded to Hurricane Melissa, tied for the number one highest impact hurricane, which we just did this last year. The Jamaican people came together, and even when the search and rescue team showed up, they're like, hey, this is in America. And I'm like, teach me. And they're like, in these neighborhoods, in our poor countries, we know where everybody is, where everyone's accounted for. We'll go and check all the houses. We know everybody across town, throughout the town, because in a poor country, you may have to count on your neighbor for a piece of bread or sugar or a lift to town. And they all take care of each other.
Yep.
He goes, if a car flips over, 20 of us will run out there and we'll flip the car back over. In America, you guys will pull out your cell phones and start recording. You don't know your neighbors. So yeah, I understand how you guys have to like, search and rescue for the missing. He goes, we've already accounted for all the missing, and those that died in the hurricane, we'll bring them off the mountain and we'll bury them. We don't need you guys up there. So it was very fascinating, on how that community works. And I encourage us as Americans to become much more community village oriented, right, in this process.
Well, I can tell you that, I live way out in the country, and, we have rural fire departments that we're really close with because our neighbors show up. I had a fire last March, and all my neighbors showed up uncalled, even neighbors I hadn't even met yet. So the rural communities are, worldwide, just exactly what you're saying. But the international connection that you've developed, makes total sense to me, and is really, I guess, what enabled you to move so fast.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. 35 years, disaster management, 14,000 projects, most every major disaster. Yeah, and what happens is you meet people at their worst time. They're having a very bad day, and they're trusting you in the most vulnerable situations to carry them through it. And it is all spirit-led. It is all led by God. I always put people before any type of monetary aspect of it. And I find that is where I've built some of the most beautiful trusted relationships. And so when shit's going down in that area and I showed up for them, they're showing up for us. But I've maintained that relationship over all these years. The team members, the operators, everybody has a specific skill set. And as you know, Jeffrey, you count on every one of those disciplines to make you an effective team that's moving as one heartbeat, one breath through that zone and getting everybody to safety and getting past that critical 48 hours, 96 hours, whatever it may be, till there's some sort of stabilization and resources are able to move in.
So I've always said that all the operations I did, my cross-border operations in Mexico, as a DEA special agent, were the most dangerous. So I'm very well aware of the danger, because you got to watch out for the cartels. You got to watch out for the judiciales, the federales that I was working with were often corrupt as well. How did you were primary? I guess I'd say you were with EMS. What was your interaction with local police and military or the cartels? Were those problems?
Yeah, I mean, they set up the cartel set up random checkpoints, right? So many of our guys are of Latin descent, right? So even when it comes to medical, most of my guys are coming out of Miami. They're Cuban, Puerto Rican. They speak the language, right? The guys out of Texas, I got a lot of Mexican guys. So to them, they already know how to move in it. Listen, I'm a gringo. My family's from Serbia, but I've surfed the whole Baja Coast since I was 18 years old. I know how do you have to stash the money and pay the federales that are going to pull you up on this one specific corner, on this turn. You're going to get pulled over. They're going to threaten to take you to jail. You smell like mota. You smell like weed. That whole same shit. But what's happening, what people don't realize in Mexico, is this is generational, right? Now where the kids are in school and you ask them what they want to be, they're not saying I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pilot. They're like, I want to be a narco, I want to be a sicario, It's like, because my grandfather was, right? That's the glorified thing. And so generationally, this stuff is in. And when in disaster zones, when you see that the government doesn't show up, but the cartels show up and their boxes of aid have their stamp on it, the people, then the cartels are saying, hey, we're the ones taking care of it. When you see the Mennonite communities that are grateful for the narcos providing protection from them because the corrupt police were extorting them and terrorizing them, that are controlled by the government, don't argue with me. It's a narco state. It's a narco state, right? That's a failed government. And it's just, this stuff's going to continue unless somebody goes in there and not just take out the main guy, but take out the entire nest. And it's so infiltrated like a cancer in the country. I don't, where do you start?
So do you know the term mordida?
Mordida?
Mordida.
Tell me what it means.
Mordar is to bite. Mordida is a little bite. That's what you say a bribe is a mordida. I've done that many, many times in Mexico and Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Bolivia. In fact, I got so good at it, I could talk it way down. But I'm sure your Latin American guys did the same thing. When I was directing the child rescue in Mexico of an American child, I sent one of my warrior school guys, who was a Mexican American Marine, fluent Spanish speaking, down with the family. And so he negotiated the way through the checkpoints, through the military checkpoints, through the police checkpoints, through the cartel checkpoints. And then when you get down there, the child goes to the mom, and there's no guns, no violence. It's not like the movies at all. And then just negotiating the way back. I assume something similar to that was what your guys were doing.
Oh yeah. You don't move through there unless you got some sort of permissions and you're paying your way through, right? And then again, it's are you on the right side of the group or are you on the wrong side of the group, right? Moving people off the X in armored SUVs creates a target as well, right? You're now a signature. They're looking at you like, are you the opposing group? Are you a federal agent? Are you a special interest person? Is there money to be extorted there?
Right, exactly.
Many times it's you go gray man, you're in a civilian vehicle, you got your guys packed in there, they're fully ready to go, and you're just moving every possible back road and just head on a swivel, quiet, under cover of night, just move slowly, quiet, get out of that zone. But it's an interesting state of affairs that we're in.
So do you think, I don't know if you were on earlier listening, I was talking about Trump's clear El Mencho killing message was you got to stop the fentanyl, get back to and human trafficking, because there's been zero illegal crossings since January 2026. And the fentanyl is deadly. It's not really a drug. It is a bioweapon, precursors coming out of China. And the Jalisco cartel was the main proponent of that. So I think the message is real clear. But it's what I call the Camarena doctrine in my day, when they tortured and kidnapped, tortured, and killed our agent Kiki Camarena, and the border shut down and everything happened. I think that's what Trump's El Mencho killing did. Did you see any response or confirmation of that?
I haven't. And I've been really just kind of buried in the operational side of it and literally just kind of decompressing today a little bit. Like we're just fielding the rest of the, the charts, getting everything kind of reorganized. But this can continue. It's just a lull, and it'll just continue. What'll happen is because the Venezuela got choked off, Cuba got choked off, they don't have other conduits of pushing their drugs into the United States. Their customer base is now going to go domestic. And that's where you're going to see a lot of problems that are going to continue. So it's like a cancer. It'll eat itself from inside out. So the people that are going to suffer for the foreseeable future that I see is going to be the Mexican people. They got very rich, very fat. And that money stream is breaking down. They're going to turn to more violent acts. I think it's going to challenge the government. There's going to be a lot more robbing, stealing, and movement of money and assets throughout inside of Mexico. It's going to be a problem because you've shut the doors. Now they're going to start turning on themselves, vying for power and territory and control, and basically raiding the other group. So I think it's going to become a lot more violent. Nobody, if you ask me, should be going to Mexico. It's going to impact the World Cup. People that are spring breakers, you think they're selling vacation packages right now? No, the cartels just with that show is massive. And what people don't understand is you let this happen for 4 years, and you want to tell me about ICE taking thousands off the street? Yeah, you're going to catch somebody in when you're catching these fish that maybe is a person who's innocent, right? The fish that you weren't trying to catch is in the net, right? But the overall mission is being very successful. He's trying to get ahead of it, eradicate this, because with a dozen guys, Jeff, this, you can bring LA to its knees when you strategically place it. And when you see all these fires burning, man, from San Francisco down to San Diego, give me a red flag day, 80-mile-an-hour winds, and a team of 12. Well, you know what those guys can do to a state like California? They can bring it's like a shock and awe on a multi area. You don't have that type of stuff. Goal is to get ahead of it, right? We have equipment with thermal sensors and all types of stuff that's being surveilled now. So the goal, I feel, with the Trump administration is to get ahead of it. Do I agree with everything they're doing? Absolutely not. But I'm not in the command center. All I can handle is the real estate that's in my boots and the clients that are in front of me at that time, at least minimizing some of those lives and create the safety. So,
No, I've been very critical of the Trump administration, but on the cartel war front, creating them as foreign terrorist organizations, back in the day, in the 90s, I was dual credentialed as a DEA special agent and a DIA intelligence officer. And it was really, counter drug was everything. I think things are actually much more effective now with El Salvador being very pro-U.S., the Panama Canal turning away from China, DEA going back into Bolivia for the first time, the Venezuelan operation, which I didn't agree with, but it is having domino effect with Cuba and other places. Did you have any governmental cooperation or difficulty, whether with Mexican or U.S. government?
No, I didn't have any difficulty there. I mean, as a matter of fact, when we did the Syria op into Sueda, into Hadar, right? We got State Department involved. We got IDF and Mossad and the whole team involved to be able to, go to the outpost and assist in the process, the humanitarian corridor. But, I haven't had any issues there. I just think that when people are traveling to these countries or they're traveling in areas right now because of how unstable it is, they should have a team that knows how to move in these countries, an executive protection detail, whether it's their group going, whether they're going on holiday, they think it's safe, they're going to stay at a resort. It just, if you don't have an end-to-end channel, it's going to create issues. And the other part of it is everybody's screaming about this, about that, about this, about that. And many times people just go with what is being told and what the narrative is and what the media is. But right across in Cuba, there's a massive humanitarian crisis coming and no one's talking about it, right? They're not talking about it. Everybody's like, well, it's not being shared. Well, you're not being told to freak out, right? So many of these people who can't think for themselves are like, okay, what's new this month that I got to freak out and be a social justice warrior for it? It's like, well, whatever they tell you to be. And then you're like, oh, let me pull that flag out now. Oh, let me pull this flag out. Oh, let me go protest that, right? The people are being played. And it's the time that we're in is simple. It's no more red or blue. It's we the people against the globalists. Like this is a global vying for power, right? You see how Trump's pushing out of the East and shoring up the Western hemisphere. And that's kind of what the Cuba Venezuela thing is. And I won't be surprised if he pushes on Jamaica pretty soon because of some of the Caribbean islands that have those Chinese ties and the relationships there. We don't want that stuff anywhere near us. We don't want them to be able to plant anything within striking distance. So those areas, all the areas that are playing with China are going to be limited and squeezed and pushed back. It'll be the East versus the West. And then at the end of the day, it's really kind of a globalist versus, at the end of the day, it's we the people, right? All I want is to be able to provide a place for my family to have their freedom, to practice their religion, raise their family, and eat real food, right? As you know, my son was vaccine injured at 2, which taught me about vaccines for 18 years, about how unsafe they are. But it's not just vaccines. It's all the environmental toxins, our water, our processed food, which forced me and my wife to go, hey, we were able to recover our son who was told that he would never live a functioning life, who's fully functioning, works full time, travels all over the world with the money that he makes. And we were in the autism health conference in San Diego every year. My wife was just appointed on the IAC board under HHS. She was sworn in a few weeks ago. And, now we're looking for how we're going to provide treatments including the first stem cell trials for autism ever done before. You know, so in my world, I'm a solutions guy. Find the problem. And in the private sector, we don't have the luxury of, you know, screwing the whole thing up and then getting just relocated to a different department or being put on leave. No, you lose your business, you lose your reputation, and you're done for. You know?
So are you working with RFK?
Yeah, he's a close personal friend of mine. Yes.
Really? Wow.
And he's doing an incredible job. Yeah. I mean, you know, even like, for example, during the LA fires, I run a whole private firefighting division where we stage commercial pumps that got the hoses. That's your fire engine. It sits on the client's property. We service it, our partners and our team. And then I dedicate a strike team to each of these people's homes. And Bobby's house has the pump system. The LA fires broke out. Me and 5 other guys were out there fighting the fire to make sure that his house was protected, along with many other very well-known people throughout there and all the way to Malibu. So there are those that prepare, and then there are those that don't. And speaking of preparing, like in my backpack, I carry the Iridium satellite phone that you shared earlier. My wife does, my kids do. I carry a Starlink right here. My mobile Starlink sits in my vehicle in case comms go out. I got my satellite phone and I got my Starlink. It's called redundancy, right? My backpack, bulletproof backpack. I got my Kevlar in it, right? I carry,
you know, right here. There we
exactly.
Go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So you're out there traveling with your kids. You put a backpack on your kid, give them the kid backpack that's got a Kevlar in it. It's super light, but you never know. That one moment could be the difference on whether your kid lives or you're the one bearing your child or your wife. And we're called to be protectors. You know how it is. People always go, yeah, well, I went and got a firearm. I'm like, yeah, that just means you're armed. It's like going to Guitar Center and buying a guitar doesn't make you a musician. Go get trained, show up for your family, because you know I won't allow that to be on my watch.
Very true. I always say the gun is not the answer, you are. And I'm a longtime firearms instructor, federal firearms instructor. Let's go back to Cuba, because are you predicting something happening there as well as Jamaica? Because I was making the analogy, I think before you came on, is that last year there were former Green Berets who were probing Venezuela, just like this Cuban boat probe, which has long been sponsored by the CIA against the Cuban government. Are you projecting or assessing something coming in regards to Cuba?
I do. Because having worked disaster zones, planning, response, and recovery, you know, those things are not written in textbooks. But when you choke out a fuel source and the place starts to go dark, right? It takes a while to bring new resources in, create new channels, to restart those engines. That time, we're already behind the 8 ball. So it's going to continue degrading and falling apart. There's sewage spilling on the streets. You're going to have cholera outbreaks. You're going to have all kinds of dengue fever. The people are just going to start drinking water that is sick, that's got bacteria in it. It's going to start falling apart when you're not able to cool your food, and the whole health and safety, food, sanitation, that whole aspect. The society is going to start breaking down. It's going to be horrific, if you ask me, if they continue to allow it to go longer. You understand? And I get it. It's a communist country, but I feel for the people. I feel for the people, and I understand maybe this is the time that Trump sees that we got to squeeze it because this is the issue, this is the risk, this is the threat. But my goal is, however that gets to look, is to lead a medical team, which I'm working on right now, Spin Up, which was my team out of Florida. Our team, my main paramedic flight rescue USAR guy is Michael Saavedra. He runs my critical response team. They're based out of Florida. He's Cuban. Their families from there. They were just there. A group of them were just there a last month before this, or month or so, whatever, before all the shit went down with Cuba. And then my team doctor is out of Key Biscayne, right? So he's the one who led where we were able to get enough donations to fill two cargo planes medical supplies that went to the front lines in Gaza and Israel during that whole crisis to be able to render medical aid like trachs, chest tubes, the field medic stuff that they were running short on. So he's instrumental in us being able to get this aid together and push into it. That's coming. But my goal in everything that I do is get ahead of it and knowing that and pre-position and get ready to push in and be able to provide those resources when the need, when it's time. It's just like what happened with Mexico. There was no time to plan. It was go time. And thank God I had assets and resources in place. My goal with Cuba and other places that are starting to heat up is to have those relationships happening now and pray to God that it doesn't happen, that whatever mobilization time we spent on it was just an exercise and we have to execute on it.
That makes a lot of sense. Obviously, how many countries are you in? 70?
We work in over 70 countries. Yeah.
And what was your Gaza involvement?
There's some things I'd rather not share.
Okay, fair enough.
Just we can talk.
What about Syria?
Syria was going in and met with Huckabee on several occasions because of the people, the Druze and the Christians. There was 2,000 Druze and Christians that were slaughtered. I don't know if you ever saw the hospital scene. They burned 5 Christian churches, took out like 30-something villages, blew up their water system, poisoned a bunch of their wells. And we went in there and met with the families, the kids that were shot, injured. The Druze went with the Druze soldiers that were also shot, and they completely caught them off guard, right? And then we pushed and met with the Druze leadership, went back, met with the congressman at the King David Hotel, gave them a complete briefing. These congressmen ran with it, right to the State Department. Everybody got involved, and then we pushed in with a convoy into Syria, into Hadar, in the outpost, in setting up their humanitarian corridor into Sweda. So that was that whole operation and getting intel of what's true and not true. And then that was shared directly. All that information was shared directly with the State Department. Israel was heavily involved in it. And then shortly after that, you saw the strike that came in that hit a bunch of stuff that was done under IDF, under Israel moved that. And then again, you don't hear people talk about the 2,000 Druze and Christians that were slaughtered, the babies that were thrown off the roofs. These are things we saw, the people that we interviewed. You don't hear nothing about that, but you hear about Gaza and the genocide because you're told to care about that, but you're not told to care about the Christians and Druze in Sweda. That never made mainstream news. Why is that? And then al-Jolani gets put in position and brought to the White House, was formerly on the terrorist watch list, right? So at the same time, I'm like, what are you guys doing? And someone goes, well, that's our thug. That's our thug, right? Oh, it's our thug. I didn't know that we played, but don't get me started. There's things I'm like, you know what?
No, they then abandoning the Kurds, which are the Montagnards, of the Vietnam War. The Kurds were our best allies. I've had on the Green Berets, the original horse soldiers who went into Afghanistan. The Kurds were our greatest allies, and then abandoning them. There is some supposition with the 115 C-17 transports that went over there empty without troops. That's going to be moving IDF troops around or Kurdish troops around. Any comments on that?
You're going to know more about that than I do. I mean, I just look at something. I look through a different kind of glass, right? Like my family's from Serbia. I remember when Bill Clinton led NATO to bomb Serbia on behalf of Kosovo, which was the Albanians pushing into Kosovo. And the whole thing was, it was Milosevic committing all this ethnic cleansing, right? When it was both sides at war, right? But we took the position of, let's go in there and bomb the Serbian trains, hospital, radio station, right? They're supposed to be off limits. We bombed the shit out of it for 78 days as Americans. My cousins who live there call me at 2 o'clock in the morning their time, asking me, Steve, why are you guys bombing us? I mean, I was watching CNN as if it was good news. And I was like, yeah, because you're doing this, you're doing that. He goes, Steve, what are you talking about? America's trying to build a military base in Kosovo, and Serbia doesn't want to allow it. Russia wanted to build a base in Kosovo, and Serbia didn't allow it. But America's taking by force and no permission, went in there, bombed the shit out of it. And one of the biggest military bases is in Kosovo. And we declared an independent state, and it's still surrounded by K4 NATO forces. You know, right? So sometimes I go, what are we doing? And at the end of the day, the people suffer, right? And you know, for me, I have a long history of how these things unfolded generationally in my family. But I learned from my parents of what was taught at home is never judge another man by the color of his skin, by his religion, you know, but judge him by his character. You will know them by the fruits of their labor. It's that simple.
Amen. Amen. Well, that's excellent, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people follow you and SABRE?
Yeah, so it's sabreteam.com, SABRE team.com. It's a security matters. They can email defense@sabreteam.com. If it's disaster management, humanitarian, medical, those type of disaster management type stuff, that's going to be strategic response partners, srp24.com or response@srp24.com. And if it's autism related, just go to autismhealth.com or healingautism.org. A lot of first responders are involved in that community. And Jeffrey, also, if there's first responders that are looking for stem cell therapy, neck, back, knees, they've been injured in that type of stuff, they've done 7 years of service, have them reach out to me. We have a whole stem cell program that allows first responders to get stem cell treatment. That is through another organization that is funding it so that they can get to treatment, you know, and heal their bodies, you know, from being wrecked. So
Wow.
keep that in mind out there as well. And I'll connect you with them, Jeff, and you can share it with your community. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually work in biotech intelligence, but only for the good guys against big pharma.
Well, then we're in the same place there, my friend. We're in the same place there.
We have a lot in common. Yeah, that's very true. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so basically you're wrapping up in Mexico.
Yeah, we're wrapping up in Mexico. I mean, right now we have nothing happening today. So it's quiet. And I like it. You know how it is. We like it uneventful. We like it eventful, but when you also like it uneventful, because the cortisol levels over the last 3 days were like, you know, you're just pitching everything possible. So I thank God everybody got out safely. You know, I think America is a lot more conscious of what's going on. And unfortunately, those things happen, but it makes people more aware, more vigilant. And I feel that that's the good sometimes that comes out of these crises, you know?
Oh, I've got a couple questions on Rumble. Have you heard about Carrie Rivera and her autism help?
No, but I'd love to be connected with them. You know, absolutely. I mean, what makes us great is community, right? The more we share, the more we support each other, the more awareness that goes out there. Yes. But yeah, have them connect.
And again, who was killing Christians and throwing babies off roofs? Where was that? That was
If you pull up Sweda, which is in southern Syria. So if you pull up Sweda, and it's spelled two different ways, Suywayda or Sweida, Sweda, Syria. Yeah, and there's videos out there. There's content we got. So if someone's really interested and they do the research on it, they'll find it. And we've built some amazing relationships with the Druze leadership out there. There's several pastors that, you know, the thing is to go back in there and rebuild it. So we're pushing on a mission right now to get some of the contractors I know to go back in there and help rebuild these churches. It sends a very strong message when these people have community that they can return back to these churches, you know, and hold worship there.
Yeah, that's so important. People forget that the original church went east because west was the Roman Empire. So the Syriac Pacific Church, you know, is the original church. So that's excellent. Somebody else says what you're saying about Kosovo is what they've been screaming about since '98. Nobody ever wants to hear it. Any other, before I let you go, any other operations or upcoming operations that you want to tell us about?
Not at this time, Jeffrey. Not at this time. Just got the finger on the pulse. I really owe a lot of our success to my partner, business partner, Byron Rogers. You know, he's a Special Forces Marine Recon. And we run an operation called Man of Peace, which is where we go in and where the Christians are being persecuted, and we simply go to do God's work. And that is quiet. It's not much of it shared, because it's not about us, right? It's about empowering those that are to be able to protect themselves, set up perimeters, security, you know, all that stuff that's part of our world, and then leave, come in, do God's work, support them. And many times when they see us show up, it instills that strength that they have somebody backing them up, right? But what's backing us all up is God.
Amen, brother. Amen. Is that a website, Man of Peace? Or
Man of Peace? Yeah, you can see some of the stuff that's on there. It's not really a website. It's kind of a place we share some stuff, but you know, there's a couple organizations that really want to get involved on the faith side, that really want to kind of go in there and really back it, so that it's really transparent. Everything's on a blockchain. I'm not a big NGO fan, to be honest with you. You know how that goes. It's just me personally. I think things should be extremely transparent, you know, because we're called to be good stewards of people's money. And the challenge is, I've been in this for 35 plus years, and it's frustrating, right? People are like, oh, you're not a nonprofit. No, we're for profit, working for specific organizations to get stuff done. We charge what we need to charge, and we're out. But we're not in there for the camera time, you know, CNN, Fox News. We limit that type of stuff. I mean, the amount of inquiries we got from this last op, you know, New York Times, all the different news stations, Reuters, please, we need to do an interview. No interviews. We're about the work.
Excellent. And you're walking a fine line to not be infiltrated by the intelligence agencies as well.
Oh yeah. But you know, the character is, we're not compromisable. I made that very clear. I'll bleed out. I'm not shifting. I love my family. We're very close and dear, but we all know what I do, and I do it because I feel God has led me all these things. He's spared my life many times, where you see miracles happen. Instead of zigging, we went zagged, and that was just Spirit speaking. And no one's, you know, the lives would have been lost going left. And that's been many times throughout my life. So I'm like, you can't have that many incidences and it just be coincidence, right? So
no, I'm old enough now to look back and see all the times, you know, God has spared me. I wear a memorial bracelet for one in particular, where I should have been on that plane crash for sure. So tell us one more time before I let you go, all the places where people can follow you, because there's a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, in the social media, I post some things from time to time on Facebook. So Steve SLEPCEVIC, right, on social media. And I don't, some of the stuff that I post, I simply have the office share. I have a person that kind of just manages it, which allows me just to focus on the task at hand, you know. So if I don't respond right away, you know, you can ping me, and I'll do my best to be on the response. If it's critical, just call dispatch. And both websites I gave everybody, they can just call dispatch, and the agent will jump on it and move it through the proper channels. I'm just grateful for you sharing the truth out there. You know, when Tina reached out, she's like, you really need to be on Jeffrey's show. I'm like, no problem. I go unfiltered, you know what I mean? I just share it like you, and I do it from love. So people get offended, I'm like, well, then maybe that's something for you to take a look at, because my intention wasn't to offend you. You know what I mean?
Just remember, you got to pay for every good deed.
Yeah. So,
well, thank you so much, Steve, and keep up the great work, and God bless.
God bless you too, and God bless your audience for tuning in. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Okay, well, I've managed to get through that without coughing too much. I just did a nebulizing treatment before this. Thank you all for bearing with me. But remember, freedom is never given. It is earned, won, fought for, and taken. So each and every day, take it.